Good afternoon and welcome to the Yale Tech Summit. I'm pleased to introduce our moderator this afternoon, Brian Miller. He is the CIO of North Sound Partners. Also panelists, Anirudh Narayan, who is the founder of iTrucks, Josh Gabal, the CEO of Core Informatics, and Chen Chen, co-founder and CEO of Saflux. They will be presenting, opportunities for tech ventures and an introductions to the Miller Prize. This afternoon's presentation will be 50 minutes. So there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. I ask that if you do decide to do so, to please press and keep depressed the microphone button in front of you as the session is being recorded.
Great, thank you. Looks like there might have been some tickets available on StubHub last night, but so the Miller Prize is actually quite a simple concept. Maybe I'll spend a minute introducing myself. I had spent a little over 20 years in the hedge fund business in New York, built several businesses which included a structured credit business, which was very data intensive, a business that at this point is probably considered to be the leading supply and demand analytical platform within a hedge fund for commodities, and probably had about 150 people globally in 3 time zones, and walked away from that about 3 years ago, had enough, opened up a family office in Greenwich, and I'm now investing my own capital in both public, private ventures and also in other alternative managers. Somewhere along that process, Yale found me, the development office found me, and they got me involved with YEI. And the concept of, I originally was more of a voyeur, showing up and watching what was going on and looking at the companies. And the concept really was to try to increase the hit rate. So the processing and of any venture or student-led venture that came through YEI, I thought that we could probably do some things to increase the hit rate of the ultimate process after the incubation of creating a venture that had a greater probability of being interesting to the current direction of venture capital financing. So we, as part of our North Sound Ventures group, are very much in touch with current funding patterns. And what I tried to do was create a prize that would encourage student-led ventures that would be really right in the bullseye of where the venture capital funding was currently flowing. So granted, it's a backward-looking mechanism, so let's say it's a trailing 12-month. Let's take a look each year at where the money is flowing, and let's try to create a prize in a number of different categories that would be in alignment with that flow of capital. So with that, I would say there's probably an example where the first version 1.0 of this really happened, and this has grown and evolved over the last year. We had this Internet of Things prize last year, where initially we had RN as a contributor there, and he had a company that was at that point was called the Internet of Trucks, which is now iTrucks, and that was one of the areas of interest to us because we had been doing quite a bit of work in the telematics area and the rapid evolution there. We have a very well-developed view of how that marketplace is going to change and ultimately become much more of a SaaS business than what it is today. And I saw significant elements of that in what RN was looking to do with iTrucks, and they were one of the 2 winners last year. And I have to say, the concept of the prize, I think, was in some ways validated by the deck that I recently received from RN, that I'd have to say that it looks institutionally investable at this point. So it rolled off the conveyor belt, and there it is. It's I think you guys I haven't really caught up with you on exactly where the funding is, but it looks really promising. So I think maybe we should just jump in and spend some time with you guys about what you're doing now, kind of Shark Tank style. So if you could maybe spend a minute each and just kind of give the elevator pitch. I'm not going to do the obnoxious Donald Trump thing or anything.
Sure.
So Josh, why don't you?
Happy to go first. And
Sure.
first of all, Brian, congratulate and thank you for sponsoring the Miller Prize. It's a really cool idea. So
Thanks. We'll see if it works.
yeah. Well, even if it doesn't, right? It's still a great incentive to stimulate innovation and entrepreneurship. So
I'm having fun, and I get to come to New Haven, and I got a T-shirt.
Exactly.
So it's,
that's great. So I'm Josh Jabal. I'm the CEO of Core Informatics, also an SOM alum from the class of '02, before this spectacular building existed. Sadly, I want to come back, get another MBA squared or something. So Core Informatics is we help scientific organizations accelerate their research operations and get products to market more quickly, which in the case of most of our clients is life-changing therapeutics for diseases and different medical conditions. But we do have clients in other non-life sciences industries as well, such as crop science and consumer products and packaged goods. And so what we do is fundamentally provide a cloud-based platform that helps them collect, organize, and manage their data, derive more insight from it, and oftentimes automate workflows in their laboratories to help them be more efficient and more productive. We are 10 years old. We're based in Branford, Connecticut, just down the road. We were founded by two former lab scientists who wrote the informatics software for a publicly traded biotech company in Branford called Neurogen Corporation. And they bootstrapped the company for its first 8 years of existence. And then about 2.5, 3 years ago, really we're starting to see the business take off based on the mainstream adoption of cloud computing and the comfort level that our client base and our industries were starting to exhibit. And so that's where I came into the company after over a decade at IBM to help scale it up. And we've now become venture-backed and growing very rapidly and having a lot of fun.
great. Lauren?
Brian, thank you so much for having me here. So iTrucks basically started with a problem, and the problem is that the logistics industry, especially in developing countries, and I think it's true even in developed countries, the logistics industry is very disorganized. It's an industry which sees tens of billions of dollars of transaction and thousands of transactions occurring every day. And yet there's so many pain points on both sides with every single transaction that happens. I used to work, prior to coming to SOM, I had another startup which used to provide Internet of Things based solutions for supply chain management. And we used to work a lot with manufacturing companies as well as their logistics partners. And on both sides of the table, we saw so many problems. So with the manufacturing companies, they would have a team full of people whose job is just to find trucks to carry their load. Then there would be problems like a lot of deviation in delivery times, and then a lot of shrinkage, items go missing. On the truck company side, we saw things like drivers picking up unauthorized loads or swapping new tires for old tires and stealing fuel. And those pain points on both sides of the table, and surprisingly, there was nobody addressing these things. And that is the foundation of iTrucks. We wanted to provide a combination of hardware and software solutions along with some add-on infrastructure to basically help solve the problems in this industry. And we are still pre-revenue right now. We have some initial customers lined up, but I'm happy to talk about the journey so far and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. My name is Chen. I'm the CEO of Sanflux. I co-founded Sanflux last year with Professor Jun Hao, who is the chair of the electrical engineering department here at Yale University. And we are commercializing the next generation LED chip that is 10 times better than the current product. And early this year, we finished our angel round of financing for about 1.8 million at this point. And we're actually partnering with some top LED companies to optimize and commercialize this product. So if you have any questions related to LEDs and this industry or this trend, feel free to let me know.
Great. Well, I think I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit here first with RN. As I said, we've been doing a fair amount of work recently in the telematics area, which is related to what RN is doing. And what we're seeing there is this dramatic transformation. We're seeing this in a number of different industries where you have a business with relatively low margins because it's complicated to run the hardware component to scrape the data from the edge of the network and ultimately push it up into something usable at the C-suite level. And those costs at the bottom end of that process are relatively large and degrade the gross margins of the business. And increasingly what's happening and what will happen in your business is that globally, all OEMs will begin having the ability to transmit all of this data from the head unit of the car. It's basically already happening. If you have a vehicle from GM, OnStar already has the ability to send to whoever they want, really, all of the data collected from your car, which would include data about cornering, braking, fuel usage. They even know what music is playing in your car at any point too, which is actually quite disturbing. And from our perspective, we think it's interesting because there's a very fragmented industry right now in terms of fleet management. Basically, you have to put a module into the OBD port, which is, I assume, you'll be doing the same thing. These ports have been made to allow multiple vendors to supply these modules, and you'll be collecting the data through that OBD port and using some sort of cell or satellite signal to transmit it. That part of the business is going to go away. Ultimately, it's going to take some time, but what that will do is it will transform all of these businesses into really pure SaaS companies, which is really what we're interested in, because a SaaS company can typically have gross margins of 70 or 80%, and that will result in a much higher valuation. So you have companies today in this area of telematics and fleet trading at, in some cases, 1 to 1.5 times revenues. They're actually being purchased there because of these cost dynamics. So with that, then, and understanding the barrier that those costs of running the hardware component, I'd like to maybe jump in and have you describe what it is that you're doing or intend to do in India, and who will bear the burden of the cost of the hardware. So very, very simplistically, you go in and you have a truck owner, and you want them to wire up the vehicle with lots, not expensive, but relatively expensive relative to the capitalization of that owner.
Sure.
And to you as a startup company, somebody needs to fund that cost, and that's where the businesses are breaking down. I don't mean to turn this into a real Shark Tank.
No, definitely.
Why not actually have a real dialogue here, right?
Yeah, sure.
So who's gonna pay for all the fancy gadgets that are gonna send you the data you need to do what you're gonna do?
We had this exact problem that you're describing. As a startup going in, we say that here's our hardware. It's going to cost you $200 upfront to implement, and we promise that it's going to do these things for you. And the thing is, going in as a startup, we have no credibility with these companies. They don't know if what we promise will actually be true. So we did try that approach initially, and we wanted our objective was to just break even on the hardware. We didn't want to make money on selling the hardware. We would make money on subscription and commissions that we would earn. So the business model, just to explain, one part of it is enabling fleet management for the trucks, and another part of it is helping match supply and demand. Basically our business model is to provide a kit which is very similar to what Brian described, at an almost break-even price to truck companies, just to have them part of our system. So it's like Uber having drivers and cars in their system. And then the next portion of it is we're speaking with shipping companies to tie up with them and say that whenever you need a truck, you can put a request in our system and we will place a truck within 48 hours. So our promise right now is 48 hours, and we're hoping that'll improve over time. And not only will we place a truck, we'll also guarantee, we make certain promises on delivery time. So if a customer requests 3-day delivery, we make sure that we can meet it before confirming with the customer. We give upfront transparent pricing, and we also guarantee the quality of our service providers by keeping track of their performance metrics. So there's two aspects to the business. One aspect is the fleet management side, which we are just using to get supply into the system. And then the other aspect is the supply-demand matching side. So going back to the first question, when we were trying to acquire customers, trucking companies to use our platform, the upfront capex was definitely a challenge. So what we ended up doing was we decided to move to a full subscription model where we would break even over 6 months. So we would provide the hardware free of cost upfront, do the installation, and we would charge a subscription fee of $10 a month, which we would hope to recuperate over a 6-month period. And this is the $10 a month that I'm talking about is only for a GPS module. So we also, the other thing we did is we spoke with multiple hardware vendors. We found some on Alibaba and in China, and then we also spoke with vendors in India and tried to find the, and we also brought in, we must have tested like 60 different GPS devices for accuracy, reliability, and cost, and ease of installation, and many other factors. And we decided on this one vendor who will end up costing around $30, $35 for a GPS device at volume. So, so yeah, our idea right now is to start with a GPS device, eventually sell the additional hardware. So the GPS device that we have selected right now has the capability to take in inputs from an OBD device. So right now it's a standalone. The OBD will give information like vehicle speed, the fuel level, and so on. We're doing additional step by step. So we start with a GPS, then we add OBD, then we add sensors on the vehicles, and eventually it'll be a suite of different data points coming into the GPS, and the GPS has a GSM built in, which is transmitting the information to our servers. So yeah, we moved to a completely subscription-based model to acquire customers, and this has worked well for us so far. We have 65 trucks signed up for our system, so when we do launch our product next month, we would immediately be able to start installing in 65 trucks and start billing them the monthly subscription. Of course, we are taking a risk upfront by investing in the hardware ourselves rather than passing on that cost to the customer.
That's the exact point, and that's what's going on in the business right now. So we can treat this like a slow motion due diligence meeting. Well, I'll come back and I have another question related to what you just said. So let's just move on to Josh. I know that your business has these 3 distinct separate components: the drug discovery, the next-gen sequencing, and the biobanking. At least that's the way it's organized to the public and the way that we see it. So in terms of, just to dig into those a little bit, on the drug discovery process, what business problem did you effectively solve for people?
Sure. So the problem is that drug discovery companies today, whether they're large pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer or Merck or AstraZeneca companies you've all heard of, or there's hundreds probably of smaller biotech startups as well that are earlier stage. But the common element is that they're doing research. They're testing out new compounds or new antibody drug conjugates, and they're screening them against a target. And all of this experimentation generates huge amounts of data. And we are in a industry, a software industry that serves that particular need, helping to manage that data, make sense of it, analyze it, automate a lot of what goes on in the laboratories where there's a lot of use of robots and automation, that if the software is up to the task, you can actually take a lot of the humans out of the processes and drive very high throughput in this experimentation. But a lot of the software in this industry is very antiquated. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, but it's a little bit off the beaten path. So we're really the first cloud-based company that's coming in, and some of you have probably heard of the kind of macro-level trend around industry SaaS, which is bringing kind of modern cloud-based software as a service approach to industry segments that require kind of a deep understanding of that domain and skills to address it in a differentiated way, as opposed to like a horizontal SaaS play, like things for CRM or for finance and accounting or things like that, where no matter what industry you're in, and the needs are all kind of fundamentally the same, and you can serve those needs with the same product. So we've come in a very differentiated fashion to help accelerate those processes, help meet the needs of the rapidly evolving science that's going on. So one of the things you can do if you're SaaS-based and you're cloud-based is you can provide a lot more flexibility to people through configuration of your product, rather than having to write lots of custom code with client-server software. So as the science evolves, the innovation behind the science evolves more rapidly, our platform's able to keep up, whereas a lot of our legacy competitors struggle. So in drug discovery in particular, and actually in all the domains that we serve, that's really the problem that we're solving.
So it sounds like there was an extremely inefficient process of thousands of drug companies effectively replicating in an inefficient way what you're doing for them now. So you effectively going in and taking over the process?
Yeah, exactly. And it takes a couple different forms. It can be taking over the data management of an existing process that's struggling. So even in some of those very large pharmaceutical companies I described, some of their labs are still managing their data in spreadsheets and paper notebooks, if you can believe it. So in those cases, it's more of a greenfield where we can come in and show fire to cavemen, basically, and show them how you can actually use software today to make a lot of these processes much more efficient and stable and insightful. And then there's a whole other bit of business that we're taking on that's replacement of competitive product that's kind of end of life, or is seen as not really fit for purpose anymore with modern needs. So we have a lot of business coming in from both sides.
Fascinating. So in next-gen sequencing, really the same question, but it's somewhat of a different problem, I'm assuming.
It is. It's a different, somewhat different problem. At the macro level, it's very similar. Large amounts of scientific data that's being generated needs to be tracked. But in the case of organizations who are using next-generation sequencing to look for more personalized therapeutics, now what you're doing is you're dealing with the tracking of samples through a workflow to drive the sequencing event. And there's a very complicated set of processes that go on from when a sample is collected, a sample being saliva or blood or any specimen that's collected to seek to provide that sample that's going to be sequenced. The accessioning of that sample, the preparation of that sample, the amplification and pooling, and all of the work that leads up to the actual sequencing event. That's where we help drive that set of workflows, and we integrate with all the various laboratory instruments that support that and automate that. And then once the sequence is done, there's a whole other industry that that's where we stop, but then there's a whole other industry downstream from that does the variant calling and the analysis of the sequencing results. And there's a whole other set of companies that we partner with actually downstream that do that as well. So you can think about all of this going on in one genome or one sample that goes through generating 3 billion data points on the back end, and you can imagine the volume of data that's generated for some of these very large studies, and that's where organizations get to the point where they understand that they need something more than spreadsheets.
So thinking about upstream, you have Illumina as the market leader now, which I'm assuming most of the data is being generated by their equipment. Did they just leave this business opportunity wide open for somebody?
No. So Illumina is as you mentioned, the market leader in the hardware side of it, the actual sequencers. They're actually a customer of ours as well, so they do a lot of their own research also, and they've hired us to support a couple of their labs. But they actually invested probably 10 years ago in another company that we actually compete with. And as of last summer, they actually went ahead and acquired that company. So we do compete now. So we have this kind of relationship with Illumina where they're a customer on one side because there's things that we can do that this company they acquired can't do very well. And then we compete with them on the other side. But it's a huge and a very, very rapidly growing market. And so although we do compete with this other division, there's actually a lot of growth for everybody.
Sounds like you might want to remain friends with those guys.
Absolutely, yeah. They're doing quite well.
I see a marriage in your future.
Well, we also there's two other very important competitors that Illumina has. Thermo Fisher acquired Life Technologies, which previously had acquired a company called Ion Torrent, which was actually founded here in Guilford, Connecticut by Jonathan Rothberg, which makes another product, a family of products in the Ion Torrent family that compete with Illumina. And then there's another company called PacBio, which also makes sequencers. And again, the science here is evolving so quickly that companies that weren't even in the market a couple of years ago have come on board and taken share. And I think, and we fast forward 5 years in this industry, there'll be probably a lot of different competitive dynamics at play as well. So we like the flexibility that we provide, the ability to integrate with all these different technologies regardless of what's becoming popular, what's falling out of favor, it gives us a really good strategic positioning.
Great, thanks. So, Chen, I haven't spent much time with you, but I recently went through the deck, and it's incredibly powerful, the differential here. So it's basically more light, less power, better than everything else that's out there, but not on a commercial scale. So obviously that's the technical hurdle that you're going to have to get over. Can you just give us a brief explanation for why it is so much better?
Yeah, so if we look at conventionally how people make LED, it's actually a semiconductor material that when you power it up, it generates lights, right? So the way people grew the crystal, or you can imagine of the old type of the material, have some fundamental issues where if you powered up that single chip, the efficiency will drop dramatically if you have higher input, which means for a single chip, you cannot really drive its brightness to a level that you want it. So that is why if you ever break one of your LED light bulbs, you will see like 20, 30 of the small yellow dots inside of one light bulb. That's because one chip can only go so dim that they need 20, 30 to make you like a 60 watts or equally 60 watts of brightness, right? Mm-hmm. So what we did is actually we invented this new material that will solve this, what we call droop problem, or the efficiency drop problem, where we can power up one chip to 10 times brighter and stay the similar or even better efficiency compared with the previous version. So that means in the future, if you look at the light bulb, we don't need 20, 30 of these small dots. We need only 2 or 3, and they're at very similar costs, each of them. So that means your chip costs are going to be reduced dramatically. And moreover, because you don't need that many chips, your light bulb doesn't have to be that big, right? If you ever go to a Home Depot to buy your LED light bulb, it looks bulky. It's pretty heavy, a lot of things inside. So it can be made much smaller. So all the downstream companies will save a lot in their cost, right? The labor, the materials, and all the other things. So that actually will also help us to enable a lot of niche market or new markets that LED haven't really touched in before. Let's say, for example, for the street lighting, we use a lot of power for the street lighting, right? There are some places that already started to use LED street lighting, but first of all, it's very expensive. Secondly, it's typically, if you use a conventional solution, it's typically huge. If you really want a high power or a good brightness outdoor street lighting, you probably need an LED chip like this desk big. So that means you have hundreds of this little chip over there, and if you hand it up, it's probably easily be blown by the wind or whatever. So that's why people don't really use it at this moment. So that's one market that with this much smaller chip or much less chip count could tackle. And there are also some other markets we're looking at, for example, for medical device, right? People, when people are doing surgery, they want this focused and high brightness point light sometimes. So those are the small markets that we're going after. So overall, we think that with this technology, we're actually enabling the next generation LED that we think, by working with all the industry partners, we can put this faster to the market so people could have the affordable and much brighter LEDs.
So just a question on execution and mm-hmm. strategy. It sounds like there's some significant IP here that you think will protect you with this process that is different. Others have approached a similar market with IP and generating profits from it in a different way. So if you think about Qualcomm and their licensing process, you have guys out there right now like Philips or Cree that are beating the crap out of each other on price. And I think some part of your business plan anticipates trying to move into the regular LED light space. Would it make sense for you to think about this more as a licensing company if you actually have a superior protected technology rather than trying to pursue any strategy that involves actually producing product?
It's a very good insight, great question. Actually, I should say our strategy sort of shifted or been modified many times since the beginning, because the more we learn about the market and the more we learn about the players we're dealing with, we actually have a better idea of what we should do. So right now, what we're shooting for is actually, instead of being a company that will eventually produce the LED chip, we're going to supply the key material that we're working on. So in that sense, if you imagine what happened in the future is that we'll work closely with Cree, Lumileds, Nichia, Osram, all these big names, and we will provide them the fundamental materials that we produced, and they will grow their LED chip on top of it. Okay. So basically, it's like we became their ally, where we give them the platform so they can develop the next generation LEDs, but we stay away from what they have been done pretty well. Their expertise are actually more in that growth of the epi layer, making LED, making packaging, also distributions. So that's also sort of the way we're working with our partners right now. So in the future, we want us to be or to dominate that little slice in this entire industry chain, where we're going to work with all these companies, sell you all the fundamental materials, so you can develop whatever you want on top of it. Okay. So we give them a little platform to encourage them to do things by themselves, so they can compete each other instead of coming back and kill us, right?
Understood. Okay. So back to you, RN. So thinking about what you said, and you're experiencing the typical problem in any fleet management telematics business of who pays for the hardware, and especially when there are upgrades involved. There are people that are struggling right now doing the 2G to 3G upgrade, and those are the businesses that can be bought for next to nothing now because somebody needs to pay. So would it make more sense for you to think about just partnering? I know that there are Fleetmatics and Trimble, and some of these guys are already on the ground in India. You guys have an idea about improving the logistics of moving freight in India. You've married that with the idea of taking on a business that's really not all that exciting. People have thought about it as being exciting for many years, but honestly, it hasn't been. So would it make sense for you to just try to find a partner so that all of the other sort of hardware on the ground logistics things happen and you guys become purely a software platform? That would be, I think, from an investable standpoint, from my seat, that would look more interesting. If I see one more person who tells me they're going to put these devices out there and do something special and then hang a software business on it, I'm going to...
Okay, so we did a couple of things. So we had conversations with truck companies in India. So there's Tata, there's Ashok Leyland, about possibly selling our kit as an OEM product. So something that when they, like how you say you want a radio in your car, you ask for an Internet of Trucks kit in your truck. We had some initial conversations with them. It was too early on. We didn't have much to show at that point. But there was some interest, so we may go back to looking at that. The model you mentioned, where trucks are coming in with OBD devices installed, and it's purely SaaS business. It's not there yet in India, but we have designed our software in such a way that it can accommodate these changes. So even if we swap out the hardware, it's very easy for us to handle any hardware on the truck side. So yeah, the first option we investigated was that. The second option we investigated was we talked to some existing small fleet management companies in India we spoke to them as a potential acquisition. And through that we were able to get information about how they do things, and they basically have a network of distributors who do installation on trucks, and we wanted to see if we can partner with one of these big distribution networks to help us do the installations. So that was another option that we went through. Another option is our biggest cost source in this is the cell phone data, and actually some of the smaller cell phone companies in India are very willing to even help us with the installation portion of it if we need it, because we're buying so many SIM cards from them, and they have the network of people all across the country. So that's an option we are actively pursuing, and we may be able to actually execute that option once we have scale. Nobody's willing to work with us when we're still in the hundreds and even low thousands.
But from our experience, the more you can get away from having to touch the hardware component, the better off.
I do agree with that. I do agree with that. Yeah.
So I think we've got a little bit more time left here. So last question for you, Josh. Most big data cloud type businesses are either out in San Francisco or some big city somewhere, and you're in the sprawling metropolis of Branford, Connecticut. Why? How is that working out?
Sure. So we're based here originally because, as I mentioned, our two co-founders had worked at a biotech in Branford, and it's where they had been based prior. But along the journey, we've had a lot of interest and inquiry about moving to one of the big cities. It's much more commonplace for a company like us to be located in Silicon Valley or more locally, either New York or Boston. And as we did some fundraising, some of the VCs that we talked to were pretty excited about the possibility of us moving, up to one of those cities. But we've stayed here very deliberately and for what we believe to be very strategic reasons. For starters, it's an opportunity based here to be much more of a big fish in a small pond. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on around New Haven, I think, in terms of software companies and certainly in life sciences, but certainly not Boston or New York. And so a company like us that's doing interesting work in an industry that makes a difference with a modern cloud technology stack can attract great talent and do so at price point that's quite a bit different than it is in those big cities. Meanwhile, in terms of our employees, they get the benefits of the quality of life that comes with living, out on the shoreline, where your dollar can go a heck of a lot further when it comes to buying a house. You can send your kids to public schools. You can live near the water. You can bike to work and not be stuck in long, hideous commutes. So there's a lot of things that really make a positive impact on quality of life, and yet we're still pretty close to those big cities. So Cambridge, Massachusetts, Boston area is where we have a ton of clients. So we're up there quite a bit, but we can get up there in 2 hours. It's easy to do day trips. It's not a big deal. And also the other factor I'd share is that the state of Connecticut has been very supportive. The state has been very active in recent years, putting its balance sheet to work to support job creation at large companies often get the headlines, but they do a lot with smaller companies as well and other companies in between. And so they have been trying very hard to make investments both in terms of equity through Connecticut Innovations as well as debt with the State Department of Economic Development. Kind of very low interest, oftentimes forgivable loans for companies that are growing quickly and creating jobs like us. So that's been a big differentiator as well.
So why don't we end with the standard panel question? So start with Josh. What keeps you up at night about your business?
Right now, it's finding enough great talent. We've got huge momentum in the marketplace. We've got very small market share, and we know what our competitors can do and what they can't do. And so largely, it's a function of finding enough software developers, enough customer success people to keep up with the demand right now. And so we invest a lot of time in trying to find great people, but it's those decisions are decisions we always take very seriously. And so that's a lot of what keeps me up at night.
Sure. And one last, what is the risk in your business that you think your current investors should have asked but didn't? That's one that people find particularly annoying.
Yeah. I don't know. We really got pretty good due diligence. But honestly, they pretty much asked everything I could have thought of.
I get it.
Yeah. No, they did a great job.
Okay. RN, what keeps you up?
For me, it's execution right now. So we are close to finishing our software. We're going to launch in a month, and after that, I really want to make sure that we add value to everybody that's involved. The truck companies that work with us ideally should be better off for having worked with us, and the initial shippers that we have signed on should hopefully have a much better experience working with us than the way they used to work before. And if we can get great feedback from both of them, great usage, people are using us more often than they say they would use us, then that would make me happy. So that's what I'm focused on right now, and until January, that's going to be my focus, to make sure that we execute really well and we get good feedback from our customers.
Anything keeping you up, Jen?
Yeah, I think for our case, the hardest part is always how you can ensure a smooth commercialization of this technology, right? It's from the lab to the mass production. There's so many things that could be run down the road. So luckily, we have Professor Hang sort of leading the technology team in the R&D, but there are many pieces actually the business team are doing now to sort of de-risk the whole thing. Finding strategic partner, get a good supply, hire the best talents. So all sorts of things that we're busy with. But hopefully, we can get every floating piece, put it together, and then have this thing ready. So.
Great. All right, well, good luck to all of you guys. Hopefully I can stay in touch. So any questions out there? Anybody want to dig in on anything?
For iTrucks, how do you anticipate getting more drivers?
So right now we're actually, we don't want to, until I have good feedback from both sides, I don't want to scale too quickly. Post-January, if everything goes well and the feedback is good on both sides, then I want to start. So there's many ways. There are, like I mentioned, there's a distribution network focused on just fleet management, implementing telematics systems. So we're in touch with those networks. We're also speaking with truck driver unions. So their unions are big in India. So we're trying to get visibility there. And I mean, I'm hoping to get really good, strong case studies after Jan that show real positive ROI for investing in this technology and working with us. So once that is really the core of it. So once that is done, then the means is through distribution networks, through building our own sales capabilities, through unions and conferences that happen around the trucking industry. So that's what we're planning.
And then you said you guaranteed a 48-hour delivery.
Yeah.
How do you determine that? Is that an algorithm?
So no, right now we're careful in picking the shippers that we work with. So we're picking shippers in areas which are highly trafficked by the truck companies that we're working with. So we're very geographically concentrated right now in one of the states in India, and where we know that we have sufficient supply for us to meet the demand. And as we scale up, in order to keep that promise, we need to make sure that we have the supply side covered before we can do that. So this is based on conversations we have with the truck companies about what routes their trucks are servicing and what their availability is. And based on that, we're able to make this promise right now.
Another question? No, I have one. So, Josh, the NIH database, that's something I think that's been sort of the holy grail. People are thinking that ultimately if all of these human genomes that have been sequenced are available to all researchers globally, that's going to be the holy grail and we're going to have major breakthroughs by. Is that something that you have a view on? Is that something that you're familiar with how that's progressing?
Not particularly, but I do know there's a lot of collaboration and there's a lot of openness, I think surprisingly so, in terms of some of these large data sets of sequenced data and making it available for research use. So I could imagine that could come together in a large
Should that be done by the government, do you think? Or is that something you could tackle?
That's definitely not in our sweet spot. That's a different part of the market.
That's really big data.
That is about as big as it comes.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So tough question, but a little outside of our sweet spot.
Understood. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.